morning.
Morning, good morning. How are you?
I am well.
We are back.
We are back, and I dare you to say his name.
It'll never happen.
Today on Sibling Nerdroid, we have a bunch of different stuff, not the least of which is our take on Nia DaCosta and Jordan Peele's new vision of the iconic horror film Candyman, as well as some rich and creamy MCU goodness, and an update on what season 3 holds for the siblings. I am Tom Cunningham.
I'm Toni Cunningham.
You are Professor Toni Cunningham, are you not?
Well, I'm kind of Professor Cunningham, I guess you could say.
You're at least as much of a professor as Professor Plum and Clue.
Oh, well, I mean, he might have a PhD. I'm not quite there yet. But yes, I am teaching at Wayne State this year. Yes.
Look at that. See how things have changed. You used to be just a little neophyte to the MCU, and now you be teaching and stuff.
I'm actually having some interesting conversations regarding the MCU in my master's level courses in communications. So that's kind of fun.
Well,
maybe we'll talk about that in the second half of the podcast today.
That's true. So for the first half, I saw Candyman in the theaters as a kid, and Tony Todd was immediately present as perhaps not the first. There was Blackula. There were some other people in the horror space. Even we covered Ganja and Hess in the previous season, as well as The Sweet Blood of Jesus. So there had been other presences of Black characters who were in the horror genre, even if you go back to Night of the Living Dead, where a Black man almost survives the entire film up until he's brutally murdered at the very end. But the Candyman character was a new character. It wasn't a modification of an existing villain or horror icon. It was a new take on the horror genre. And Tony Todd's rich, deep voice and the bees and the hook and the slashing and the Chicago, all of it was very fresh and exciting. And in fact,
and at that point, just to back up a second, I think we were in Chicago at that point. We lived there, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was too young to really remember, but you would have been
outside of Chicago. But yeah, right. I mean, in the burbs. But it was revelatory, and it spawned a whole bunch of sequels, both theatrically released and then eventually straight to DVD. But it was an enduring franchise, and it was a franchise in this era of, hey, why don't we try a reboot? It was an obvious one to go with, and Jordan Peele becoming the iconic, master of the horror genre on film, and Nia DaCosta, a super talented director, combined forces. So what did you think, Toni? Because like you said, you were 4 or whatever when the movie first came out.
I was going to say, I've seen the first Candyman like once, but I was like a preteen or a teen. And up until very recently, I've been a scaredy cat when it comes to horror movies. So I don't really watch a lot of them.
That's real.
That is very real. So I was a little nervous going into this one because it'll be the first horror movie outside of Us and Get Out that I've seen in theaters, not including like Scream, like those, or like I Know What You Did Last Summer, like those kind of pop culture things. So I loved it, though. I thought it was a beautiful film. I thought the visuals and the cinematography and the directing of it was much higher and above and beyond what I have come to expect from most horror movies. So I left and was telling everybody, like, I saw this and Shang-Chi the same weekend, and they were both very good, but I preferred Candyman, actually. And I've told many people to go see this movie at this point. I even got Mom, who is not a horror movie person at all.
But really enjoyed it.
She went to go see it with my dad, who apparently did not enjoy it as much. But yeah, so I really enjoyed it. I thought it was beautiful in a way that I don't think the horror movies typically are beautiful. And I thought the story was pretty. There was some confusion. There was some the world maybe had some breaks here and there about what could and couldn't happen.
Yeah, the rules were a little fuzzy.
A little bit, but it was good enough elsewhere that I didn't. It didn't bother me.
Yeah, I loved a lot of the symmetry of the original story. And I also really enjoyed the shadow puppets, which were used in that haunting opening
Yeah.
campaign, which really drew me into the idea of even revisiting this character. And uh, because the original Candyman, Robitaille, was an artist, and the new Candyman, Anthony, was also an artist, and Tiana Paris's father was also an artist. Uh, there were just so many different parallels with what was going on. And then, even from the opening sequence, the title sequence, it's like this upside down view of Chicago. And so you had all these very angular, beautiful, like Art Deco-y kind of shapes as you
Mhm.
moved through the city. And they had some long shots, which kind of showed the new gentrified area around Cabrini Green in contrast with Cabrini Green in the foreground. And there
Right.
were just lots of really clever and wonderfully thought out shots to kind of put us in the space. And then you had some really strong performances throughout the film, much stronger than in the original movie, I have to say. But even have to have Vanessa Williams back as the mama, who, she ain't age a day. It's been a long time since that movie was out, and I was
They
legit
look
like,
exactly the same.
so Yaya is supposed to be her son? Because could you put some wrinkles under your eyes, ma'am, so that we could believe that? Because Yaya looks a whole 35 years old, and you look like you're 40. So I don't know.
I will say I enjoyed the person that played Tiana Parrish's brother. I think I'm looking at that now. It's like Nathan Stewart Jarrett, I think is his name.
Yeah, he was giving me Billy Porter a little bit, but that's okay.
A little bit, but it was the comic relief needed for the film, and there wasn't too much of it. Like it was really
Mm-mm.
balanced. You know what I mean? So a lot of times things can get a little bit like punny and a little too like, okay, we get it, you're trying to break the tension, but like they placed his moments really perfectly to kind of relieve tension
Well,
throughout the film. So I
and
appreciate
create
it.
tension,
And
actually,
create
from
and
the
create
very,
tension
from the
at
very
the
beginning.
beginning. Yeah.
It's his fault. It's your fault.
Right.
You
Or
did this.
like when they came in to go get her bags, like her stuff from the
Yeah, yeah,
apartment,
yeah. No, that
and he
was
was
great.
like, "We come in." I was like, "Okay."
It was very real.
Yeah,
Of,
it was fun.
the relationship between the siblings, I thought was very well played out.
Mhm.
And even some of the more subtle elements about how the violence that surrounded Tony's art exhibit in the show all of a sudden changed the whole script. It was like, now the art critic was interested, and now there was a bigger story to tell, and now the work was so intriguing because people died. And even the black, I don't know what her role was, but the black woman at the museum who was interested in getting Tayana to come work with her, she was
Right,
like, "And your father's work and his tragic. It
right.
seems like you're attracting all. There's a great story there." And then it was like, "Ew." The great story is that her dad killed himself.
She's attracting a lot of trauma, is what she's
Exactly.
attracting. Yeah, yeah.
Hello. So those things were more subtle, um, but I really appreciated and enjoyed how the myth was expanded. You originally think, oh, they're just completely rebranding what Candyman is. There was actually a Candyman who was passing out candy.
Right.
And so they've just abandoned everything else. But then the Coleman Domingo character, you tricky devil, uh, he ends up really kind of, well, I guess even before Coleman Domingo was introduced, Anthony had been hit with the curse because that bee stung him, and
Mhm.
one of the most horrible body horror transformations since The Fly. I was like, oh, the fingernail, oh, he's peeling off his skin,
That was
and
extremely well done. I had to avert my eyes a couple of times. I was like, I don't know if I can see this. This is a
what
little bit much.
what is that phobia where people are afraid of looking at holes in things?
Oh, I don't know what that's called, but I do.
But you
I've
know
seen
what I'm
pictures.
talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah.
And by the end, when the curse was really kind of completely taking over his body, that's what his skin looked like. It
It
looked
looked
like
like honeycomb. Yeah.
oh, Honeycomb. Oh, I hadn't
Yeah.
even thought of that, but honeycomb fits both with the holes and with the creepy phobia and all of that. I wasn't
Yeah.
thinking of that, but it makes sense because all of it
It's
came
all
from a
bees.
cursed sting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it bees that way sometimes. But um, also, I really loved the motif of the music that they brought back from the
Mhm.
that's a really haunting and plaintive uh melody, and it's kind of got that sweet kind of like ice cream truck or music box lullaby feel, but also
Yeah.
with the blue notes, it's very mournful and sad and drawn, and using the extended cut of the shadow puppets at the end in the titles was
Yeah.
just extra haunting. I mean, that poor little Emmett Till guy and
Yeah.
all the brother who was just trying to move into the house, and the way they managed to capture so much emotion with just those silhouettes, uh, I thought was really, really good.
Yeah, horror movies have, and granted, I'm as I said, new in the last year and a half to horror, but between like the soundtrack with like Halloween or and what you
Hmm.
just said about this one, it's kind of this strange dichotomy that tends to work with horror movies and their soundtracks, and it reminds me of, I forget the name of it, but there's like a Denzel Washington horror movie where like a spirit passes from person to person, and the person that sings a
Um,
song is the person
yeah,
who's
it's.
taken.
I think it's called. Is it called Fallen?
Maybe, and I
I
can't
know what you're
remember the
talking about.
song right now, but like every time I hear it to this day, I
It,
get chills.
I think it's
Yeah.
Time is
Time is
on
on
my
your
side.
side. Yes. Ugh. No.
Yeah, and it's because the guy touches as he
Mhm.
transfers from a body to body. It just takes a touch, and then the evil spirit, or
Transfers
whatever.
over.
Yeah, I don't remember what the whole thing. I just
I don't
remember.
either, but my whole body right now is like, no,
Yeah,
I don't like it.
yeah,
And I
and
didn't remember. I didn't remember from the original Candyman. I didn't remember that that was what that music was from. So I didn't realize it was transferred over, but it did work here
and
as well.
and now it might be one of those things, Tony, where just like you and the whole Karate Kid thing that you posted about on your wall, it might be that I'm misremembering that
Oh, I don't know.
theme was in the original one. It seems like maybe it was, but
Mhm.
also since the Candyman movie has been delayed so long, I know I heard that theme in the first Shadow Puppet
Sure.
teaser
Sure.
trailer, and that was in 2019.
Oh,
And
wow.
they
Okay. Yeah.
did not update. If you notice in the titles, they did not update it beyond 2019. It was like 2019 was
2019.
when it was set, and so it was supposed to have been released 2 years ago. And so it's possible that that theme has been just stuck in my head for 2 years, and I'm like, oh yeah, it was in the original, um, but it fit. So
Yeah.
and
No, it
everything I
works.
said about it is still true. But
And I will
I
say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, 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 go ahead. I will say, go ahead and say it.
I was gonna say, you've mentioned a couple times now the shadow puppets, which is something that I wasn't super familiar with until, funnily enough, I went to see this film with two people that I just finished working on a movie on, and
Mm,
that movie was a puppet movie, and we used shadow puppets in that movie. So it was very interesting to see kind of like, okay, this is how you actually make the shadow puppets work, and then to see it
right.
projected on a screen the way that it was actually a really cool way to kind of end up that shoot. But they, yeah, I think my favorite part of the shadow puppets was when the woman who was sitting there with her legs crossed, her foot,
With the foot
yeah,
tapping. As soon as you said my favorite part, I was like, it's gonna be that
yeah,
tapping foot because the tapping
it
foot
was
was real.
fantastic. It was fantastic.
One of the things that I also really appreciate about the choice is that they made a conscious decision to use the hands that were
Yeah.
manipulating the strings,
Yes. Yeah.
which was like a kind of a meta subtext
Storytelling.
to the storytelling
Hmm.
about how the puppets were being manipulated, and how the people who were represented by the puppets were being manipulated by society. And there were
Yeah.
so many cool layers, and that's what you get from Jordan Peele. I know a lot of people, one person said, oh, Jordan Peele is like M. Night Shyamalan now, and after Get Out. And I was like, first of all, this is only the third damn movie, and he didn't even direct this.
And
And
it's also
so
not, I was going to say, it's not just his. This is also
exactly.
very much Nia DaCosta's.
Right.
Yeah.
And although he and she co-wrote it with somebody else and he
Mhm.
was the producer, still Get Out was completely fresh
Right. It was
and
Get
surprising.
Out and Us were auteur films. This is not an auteur film.
It is not.
Yeah.
It is a reimagining, and I liked the choices they made in reimagining it. So let's get to maybe some of these questions that we has about
Oh,
some
I
of
don't
these.
see any.
No, no, no. I'm saying the
Oh,
questions that we
okay.
kind of raised
Yeah.
because we were talking about rules and whatever. And one of the biggest trips in the rules in this movie was who has to say Candyman, who receives consequences for saying Candyman. Somebody can start saying Candyman and another person can end saying Candyman. But I guess in the broader scheme of
If you
things,
said it 5 times, then all of a sudden there's a shadow in that sheet behind you right now. I just want you to know I'm out.
yeah, I'm not going to be doing that.
Yeah, no.
Confectionery guy is not going to be mentioned. I did that on purpose in the title, just to, and I left out the fifth one. But I took it that, first of all, by the time the Anthony character who inherits the mantle of Candy person says the words, he's already been stung.
Yes.
So the curse is already on him. And so instead of him being killed, when he says it, he just resurrects the ghost again. And
Right.
later on in the movie, his mama says, we all agreed that no one would say it again.
Right. And
And,
my thing
and
about
somebody broke it. And it turns out that it was, what's his name? Sister Coleman Domingo's sister, who
oh, right, right.
may have reactivated the myth or whatever. Go ahead.
Um part of what I wondered as I was watching the film is who is inhibiting what body and when, and if at all. Because there were a couple of moments when I was like, okay, it's the ghost that's killing, obviously. But then there
Right.
are other moments where I'm like, but maybe not, because he's freaked out about his own presence in a place where, like with the journalist, he's freaked out about his own presence in a place where someone has just said it 5 times and he's like, I have to go. Like, he can't be there.
Right.
But is
And
he there because he was interacting with the ghost? Do you know what I'm saying? It was a very odd kind of, like, I don't know what
the,
those rules were.
this is the first time, and again, this movie ignores all of the previous sequels.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes from original Tony Todd Man right to Yaya Man, and with none of the other stuff in between. It ignores Farewell to the Flesh. It ignores Day of the Dead and all those other sequels. It's basically pretends they
But
don't
those
exist.
are all Tony Todd, though.
Those are all, well, Tony Todd and Tony Todd adjacent. Yes, he was still the focus.
Okay.
So I think that the main differentiating factor is that Yaya, who brought the ghost back,
Mm-hmm.
is being set up. He is already on a path to be the fulfillment of Tony Todd Man's original intent, because they say he had a plan for you. You were to be his sacrifice. And so
Right.
because Tony Todd Man had infected him with a curse, he was not subject to the same threat as any other person who said it. So what he was seeing was, you called me, your hand's about to fall off, and your part of your curse is realizing that you are going to become this. And so every time he saw Sherman all beat up with bees and hooks and things, it was another step closer to him merging with the ghost persona. And so I think it was the ghost killing up until the point where he actually became the ghost, and then he was killing. I like that they kind of left that open of, well, is he actually doing it? But I think we are left to understand, especially when all of the murders that we see on screen, there is no physical body there. It's the bodies are being lifted you can't
You
see
can't see him, yeah.
Sherman
Like that
unless
gorgeous
Sherman's in the
shot
reflection. Yes,
from outside of the
from
building
outside the
when
window, and
when the journalist gets
and it
killed. Yeah.
almost looked like she's dancing.
Yeah, like levitating dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
So
gorgeous.
I think we are left to believe that it is Sherman, or the Sherman manifestation of the Robotai demon or whatever.
Right.
The most recent incarnation of the spirit, and then old boy embodies and becomes the new spirit of vengeance, with the
Right.
idea that he's going to right the wrongs of Black Lives Matter and gentrification and everything else, which is
So
Coleman Domingo's plan.
that was the other interesting thing, is that it wasn't
Burke.
until I left, it was on the drive home, that I realized that Candyman never killed a person of color.
Correct. In
Which
this
I
movie.
didn't in this movie.
Well, that's not technically correct, because Sherman Man, killed Burke's sister and their friends.
This
But
Candyman.
this Candyman only kills the 5 cops at the end. So, but there's other deaths in the movie, and
but I'm saying in this time, like Sherman's that sugar person that killed Sherman's sorry, sister, William sister.
William
that was
Burke,
like the 80s, though. That wasn't like now. I'm
Correct.
saying in the timeline that this film actually took place.
Correct. That is true.
Happen. Yeah.
No. And in fact, the only Black person who is killed in this timeline is killed by, spoiler alert, is killed by Teyona in a particular, Sister Girl was not playing. That's
when she went down for number like 7 and 8, I was like,
it was like, oh yeah, no, you serious? Because I think most people would have just been fine with the eyeball gash.
Right.
But she was like, no, you are not gonna do this. And it was like, okay. And I really liked that, because again, that's turning horror tropes on its head. The first thing was when she said nope, when she opened up that creepy ass door.
That actually,
she said nope.
That moment in the theater. So I was there with 2 other women, and I was on the far end, and as she opened the door, like a half a second before she said nope, I said nope. And everyone around me started laughing as she said nope, because it's exactly the reaction. Like that's the only reaction.
And just like other horror films, how many times was Jason stabbed in the face, and then the heroine is like,
and then she runs upstairs
and she leaves, and just as soon as she turns her back, Jason's like,
I'll tell you what, that was my biggest thing. When she stabbed him in Halloween with the hanger, and then dropped the hanger, and then when she stabbed him with the knife and dropped the knife and went to another room, like.
And Sister Girl said, I know anatomy.
Right, she's like, you are going to be dead. Yeah. No last gasp happening here. Like, no.
She played no games. Now, I found myself.
Which, by the way, I'm so sorry that I didn't mean to interrupt, but like something that I just realized something. One of the things that I wrote about when I was taking the horror, gender, and race class a couple semesters ago was that there's all this talk about final girls, and there's never any Black final girls.
Oh, she's a final girl.
Is maybe one of our first mainstream Black final girls. That's kind of exciting.
I mean, to the extent that by that moment in the movie, she's actually manipulating circumstances to to set things right.
Yeah.
But then you're kind of left with that ambiguity, because imagine a Black woman in handcuffs with cop blood on her, looking at a fence in Cabrini Green where 5 cops have just been killed.
Yeah.
I mean, unless Candyman decides he's going to protect his bae, that's not a situation that's going to end up very well for her.
But I feel like that was kind of implied, was that he was, because she was still alive.
Oh, no, I knew that Candyman wasn't going to get her. I'm just saying other cops were pulling up.
Oh, sure.
In the aftermath. And those cops who didn't have the context of knowing that, in fact, cops had improperly shot her boyfriend, all those cops are going to see is five
Sure.
cops
5 dead cops and
who
a
are
bloody
dead.
black
And
woman.
but granted, the bloody black woman has handcuffs on, so it's not like, well, how did you kill 5 cops, girl? Because you were in a locked
Right.
cop car. So I mean, clearly, but it opens the door. The interesting thing is that because Tony Todd has a super, maybe overly CGI'd cameo at the end. I mean, I know he wasn't going to have
I
bees
don't
on his
care. I
face.
was like, yes. I
Yeah,
was very excited.
I was
Yeah.
here for Tony Todd. And of course, all his face and the bees were all CGI because when he did the first movie, and they had to have those bees in his mouth, they paid him $1,000 for each sting he got.
Really?
And he got 24 stings in his mouth.
So wait, I don't know. This is, and maybe this will be a fun little transition into the second half.
The next
But
thing. Mm-hmm.
yeah, there was a interview done right before Falcon and the Winter Soldier came out with Anthony and Sebastian, and Josh Horowitz was the interviewer, and he's got a question that he asks people that says, "Would you rather have 100 bees in your mouth or 1 bee in your butt?" And people have to answer that question. And I was like, how would you have 100 bees in your mouth? And then you just told me that is not a fictional
It's not a fictional thing at all.
Apparently that happened and paid. So interesting.
Yeah, I did really enjoy this. I appreciate it. This kind of brought me back from Us. Us, I thought, had a lot of really cool ideas. And until we got to, I mean, there was a third act reveal, obviously. Dun, dun, dun. She was a tethered. But I didn't quite fully understand the Hands Across America connection. I didn't quite fully understand how the rules of all of the tethered work. And it was an intriguing idea, and it creeped me out. And, anchored by Lupita Nyong'o doing an incredibly difficult and challenging performance. And also Kingston, that's his name, right? Winston Duke.
Winston Duke.
Celebrating big bro thighs for the rest of the world to appreciate. So I really did enjoy it. And I think Jordan Peele is very far away from being M. Night Shyamalan, because Old is trash. Just in case. Spoiler alert, Old is trash.
I haven't seen Old. I haven't watched an M. Night movie in a minute, but I will say one thing that I was already excited about Nia Costa, but after seeing this, I'm even more excited about her. And also just like, let's give this woman her flowers for being the first Black female director to have a number one
at the
box office. That's fantastic. That's awesome.
Isn't she directing an MCU film next?
I believe is she doing the Marvel?
I think she's doing the Marvels.
Hold on, let's see. Because I think you're right. I think she is. Speaking of which, that's another great transition, because we've got Teyonah Parrish, who was in WandaVision and is going to be in the Marvels.
Aha! And I did that on purpose.
It is directed by Nia Costa. Yes.
Captain Segway. So now we're back to our Marvel stuff, and I think we should jump into the more recent Marvel film, which I have more good things to say about, which is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now, in another podcast that I work on, this bitterly divided the 6 casters. There were 3 people who were on the hated it, and there were 3 people who were on the hate. And there were 3 people who were on the we really enjoyed it. And I was on the enjoyed it side. I liked a lot of it. I did not feel, my one quibble was that, especially in the third act, I did not feel that Shang-Chi was enough of a hero. It seemed like a lot of the heavy lifting was being done by the dragon. It felt like a lot of the heavy lifting was being done by his sister and his auntie, who is amazing. Yo, who was also amazing on Star Trek Discovery, and of course was also extra amazing in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Michelle Yeoh. So I felt that he as a hero was not really becoming a hero so much. The fight sequences were great. I loved that they simplified the 10 rings and kind of made them, different than they are in the comic books, because it would have been too much. And I thought the visuals were beautiful. I'm not an Aquafina fan, but I believed their chemistry. I believe they're kind of sibling-y, high school, nerdcore chemistry. And I could understand, because that is a thing. You're supposed to have some sexual tension. It wasn't sexual tension, but it was certainly romantic tension by the time we got to the finale. And so I enjoyed it, and I understand why it's doing well, and I love the representation, and I really love Simu Liu's shout out to like Chadwick Boseman, and he's really been repping what this moment means for Asian representation in general and Chinese representation in specific, and I just really enjoyed it.
I did too. As I said, I saw this and Candyman the same weekend, and I liked both of them. I was very happy with.
Wait, what did you say? Did you say in? Yeah. What did you...
Shut up. Shut up.
Look, you're trying to avoid the fate of those 4 girls in that bathroom. I feel you. I'm not mad at all.
One of my weird fears is that I'll be on a Zoom call and I'll see somebody over my shoulder. So when I'm discussing this film in particular, I'm not messing around. So
I understand.
It's the same with, and not to go back a step, but there's a film that was maybe the film that scared me the most in my entire life, to the day that to this day I can't watch it anymore, and that's The First Power. I don't know if you remember that film.
I do.
Lou Diamond Phillips.
Yes.
Yeah, that movie destroyed me, and it's terrifying to this day.
Isn't that, did that actor also appear in that Denzel movie?
Oh, the scary one?
Yeah, the Fallen movie. Because it seems like, because The First Power, it was like resurrection or something, right? And the guy
there was a lot of weird. Yeah. Well, he was sentenced to death, but his spirit came back and lived in other people. So similar.
Yeah.
What was his name? Jeff Kober is the actor's name.
Right. And
I don't know.
Given how he looks, I mean, of course he plays a creepy person. I mean,
well, he plays a creepy person. He also plays a creepy person in New Girl for a 3-episode arc.
Oh, and, see, I don't watch New Girl, so
right. And so that's kind of tempered my fear of him a little bit, because it's a silly show.
Right.
But in The First Power, I was in high school when I saw that for the first time. I watched it at home by myself. My parents were out of town, and there is a catchphrase. It's "How's the stomach, buddy boy?" That's absolutely terrifying. And my friends would call me at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning and say that phrase and hang up the phone. So I didn't sleep for 3 days. Anyway,
that's not cool.
No, it's not. It's actually super, super rude. I don't see the Denzel film here on IMDb, but I don't know.
Well, that's okay. He's a creepy dude for sure.
He's a creepy dude. Where was I going? Creepy. Where was I going with this though? Before we got onto the Jeff Kober train.
Well, we were talking about Shang-Chi. And,
well, I'll say this: I enjoyed the film. I liked Iron Man 3, which you did not. So the bringing back of Trevor, and then the little no head animal was super funny and cute to me.
I thought the chicken pig was adorable.
Chicken pig! But I agreed with you. As soon as the movie ended, the first thing I said, I turned to my friend and I was like, there's a little too much dragon. That was there was too much dragon happening at the end.
There was a lot of dragon.
Yeah. So that for me was kind of okay. But up until that point, I enjoyed it. And his dad, Toni, I'm gonna massacre this man's name.
Liang.
Is also just fantastic.
He is very good.
So good. I enjoyed it, and I'm glad to have seen it. I don't understand the people that hate it. Why?
I don't understand it
what were some of the reasons that you were getting on the other podcast?
Well, 2 of the folks on the other podcast are martial artists,
Okay.
and they were really leaning into how impossible. Well, a in the comic books, he's called Shang-Chi, Master of the Martial Arts. They
Mhm.
particularly did not call him Master of the Martial Arts in this movie, and I think that was intentional because Tony, his father, was actually Wang Wen was actually the master of the martial arts. And so this was, I think, a transferring of that mantle, because the 10 rings obviously give you a lot of superpowers, but they were taking note of the fact that it did not appear, and we certainly weren't shown on camera, that he was in any way keeping up with his martial arts, despite the fact that he was trained 12 hours a day from the time he was 8 until the time he was 14 against the
I will
strongest
say,
assassins in the
yeah.
universe. I mean,
I will say I loved that bus scene. I loved that bus scene, but
yeah, the bus scene was really cool.
it did cross my mind like, okay, we saw you do some push-ups, but that's all we saw you do before this moment. So like, how did this happen?
Yes.
But so I do get that. But it's a Marvel movie. Come on. But the other thing was it was giving me speed. Like I was just
Yes.
getting a lot of like it was very referential, especially like when Aquafina took over at the wheel
Yes.
and couldn't
It was very Sandra
super
Bullock.
speed. Yeah, yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I was like, I wonder if that was a purposeful homage or if it just kind of happened that way. I'm not sure.
Well, I guess my response. Well, I can tell you exactly what my response was. Outside of the original sequence with Tony Leung kind of destroying that village or that stronghold of another warlord, we don't see Tony practicing martial arts. Tony's standing in a suit watching his son get beat up, but he's not actually battling anybody. And then the
It's true.
next time we see him do something, he's battling those people in the restaurant after they killed his wife. Spoiler alert.
And one of the things is if they did, I think it's very particular that they did it the way they did it, because otherwise we would have had to have that superhero training moment where
Right.
Shang-Chi is learning all of the things he needs to learn to fight people. And we don't get that moment in this, and we don't get that moment in this because he was already trained as a child, which they show in flashbacks. So
Well, and also
it makes sense to me.
you do get that training montage when they are in Ta Lo.
But it's small.
Well, but it's a training montage because mostly it's focusing on the transformation of Katie into apparently the world's greatest archer after a couple of hours, and also the sister kind of claiming her superpower with the dragon powered magical throwing things, which is a really cool weapon. I've seen that ball kicky thing with the spiky end thing. I think characters in Crouching use that same weapon.
And there's a version
really
of
cool.
that weapon. There's a version of that weapon in Tarantino in
Kill Bill.
Kill Bill. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's right. The Kiki girl,
Yep.
the little Harajuku assassin with the spinning blade thing. That's where it was.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was very Marvel-y. It had the right amount of humor. For a Marvel film, it had the right amount of emotion. And unlike a lot of Marvel films, I thought the structure, you had a complex villain who ended up being sympathetic. He ended up sacrificing everything for his son and his family. And it was a richly layered and textured story. It was a lot like Black Panther in that, where you use flashbacks to develop the character. You use strong family to develop the character. There were obviously a 90+% predominantly POC cast. It was very immersed in the cultural elements of the universe in which it was living in the same way that Black Panther was. So it's a very apropos comparison.
Sure.
And I appreciate it on that level for everything that it was.
Agreed. And it's funny because you mentioned like the scene where his sister is first introduced and they're fighting in those cages. When I was watching that, I was like, this also gives me a lot of Wolverine. Like the intro of Wolverine in one of the movies where he's like fighting in a cage in some bar or something like that.
That's in the first. That's in the first X-Men movie where they're trying to where Patrick Stewart is recruiting. I mean, Professor Xavier.
So that was something that was interesting to me. But then also I saw someone tweet this and it made me really sad. And they were like, I just wish Chadwick go around to see this because he would have been so supportive because he knows what it's like to
Oh,
be this for Black people, and then so
absolutely.
I could see it would have been nice to really see the two of them
It
together.
would, yeah, that would
It
have
would
been
have been
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you about some Easter eggs because I don't know if you saw this. But since you loved Iron Man 3 so much, did you see the Extremis soldier in the cage match?
No.
So when they first arrive and in the golden dagger fighting arena or whatever, and they're walking through, and the guy's saying, "Oh no, these guys are just undercard matches." There's a guy who is glowing.
Oh,
And
I'd have to see it again. Yeah.
he's an Extremis guy, and he's fighting a widow.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
That's
So
cool. There was a
like,
lot to take in that, especially in
there
that
was
scene. But
it
I
was
so I
very
missed that.
busy.
Yeah.
I was disappointed that there was no payoff for Abomination. I was sure that we were going to see one of the after credit scenes of the Countess recruiting Abomination to be her Dark Hulk. So I was sure that was going to happen.
Let's talk about the after credit scenes because, well, first and foremost, the theater that I saw it in, it wasn't sold out because it was an early show, but it was very full.
Right.
And my party of 4 were the only people that stayed for the credits, which blows my mind. And I mean, this is like other than the first Iron Man, this is the first time I've seen a Marvel movie in theaters.
Oh, and right.
I even knew not to leave before the credits. So it was a little mind-boggling to me that everybody was like, all right, movie's over. But in those, there's 2 questions that I have.
Hopefully
Bruce is back. And he had been Professor Hulk, and they had that's how he was living now. Right. So the question is, why is Bruce back to Bruce? And then secondly, is Shang-Chi's sister, what's her name?
Xialing.
Yeah.
Xialing.
Is she a villain going forward, or is she just creating a badass girl army?
I am anticipating, because one of the widows is in her camp.
Okay.
I'm anticipating a widow Sharon Carter, Xialing, Super Fem Force 5 kind of thing happening. I think because Sharon Carter, as power broker, she doesn't have access to the super soldier serum anymore because it was all destroyed. And so I think there's going to be an inevitability of these 3 kind of coalitions of super ladies kind of working together, because and this is where, sorry, ScarJo, you made a super crucial error. You very easily could have asked for a Widows series set between the Snap and Endgame. People would have watched that show. I mean, I know you were salty, but your team didn't need to ask for 100 million. You needed to Loki yourself and get Widows. And if you had Widows and the Dora Milaje, if you had ScarJo and Yelena, ScarJo and Florence Pugh and Denai Guerrera, and she had 5 Dora Milaje and you had 5 widows and you were wandering the earth trying to rescue the other widows, that would have been a show. That would have been a show, and people would have watched. I would have watched the shit out of that show. I mean, it could have been Alias.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Keep your eye on the prize, girl.
Well, and I'm
also
really curious. I'm also really curious about, because from what I'm reading in like the gossip kind of rags, is that the Russo brothers are questioning whether or not they're going to return to work with Marvel after the
and
Black Widow stuff. So we'll see what happens. But
yeah, but that takes us to Black Widow.
Yes.
And we hadn't talked about Black Widow. Black Widow is an old movie right now, and obviously mired in a lot of controversy. I really did enjoy Black Widow. I actually did. Another film anchored by the strong performances of women, between Florence Pugh and Rachel Weisz, and obviously ScarJo and Olga Kurylenko, who is the Taskmaster. And of course, we don't know that it's a woman, but we find out that it's a woman. and of course all of the other widows. So this was a movie, except for David Harbour and the villain, who, let's be real, he's a, there you go, a sociopath in a suit. It was basically women doing the damn thing. Also, the brother man from Handmaid's Tale, who was getting her the various things, including a Quinjet, which is like,
Mason.
how'd you do that, bro?
Benny?
Yeah, Fog Benley.
Fog Benley.
And he was enjoyable too. And there's again a little bit of chemistry
Tension
in between them. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the sequences. I mean, there was a bit of ridiculousness, but there were also some very good moments. That foreign cute, the poser thing, which I just found out. I just read that was such a poser. Which kind of sounded like hoser, the way she was saying it. That was an ad lib.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize that. That's cool.
Because Florence was actually making fun of ScarJo, and they kept it in the scene. Yeah, which I thought
that's awesome.
That was really hilarious. Again, when the Countess recruits Pew at the end of that movie, and I accepted that it was Abomination in the trailer because it's a very different looking Abomination than before. I was like, oh, so first we had US Agent, then we had Widow, and now we got Abomination. So that's Captain America, Black Widow, and there's Hulk. And so I thought that was going to be the bridging thing. And then they didn't do it, and I was very salty. But the opportunity still exists, obviously, because Abomination is with Wong now.
Right. Yeah, and we didn't really talk about his showing up in Shang-Chi.
Yeah, apparently, I mean, it's appropriate because Wong is Chinese, and this was the super Chinese thing, and he's also a mystical person, and so that kind of relates to Ta Lo. And
but I think also it's just going to bring everything back around to Strange, and I think Strange is going to be all over Phase 4.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
I think they're just,
he's the inciting incident of Spider-Man, and then he's got Multiverse of Madness, and then all the way through, because Quantumania takes us all the way into 2023, and so everything next year, at the very least, is going to be dealing with multiversal consequences. Which, take the time, Marvel, take the opportunity, and get a T'Challa back.
I heard that, I know you probably wanted to beat on that for seriousness, but I'm going to move forward. I heard that that Wanda is likely going to be a villain, which is going to be really interesting to me.
And Scarlet Witch has definitely been, there are a number of storylines where she's villainous. Even going back to the early days, way back in the Avengers, where we finally understand that her chaos magic comes from her being kind of touched by Chthon. This is in the 80s. John Byrne did the issues, and it was a very good arc discussing how the character's the true nature of the character's powers and the breadth of her powers was revealed then. And then there was, of course, the No More Mutants storyline, and the storyline that we basically saw in WandaVision, where she kind of went crazy and invented her children out of whole cloth, and then House of M, and which was related to the No More Mutants. So she's been a character who's done bad things, and so that's not surprising. But whether or not it's going to end up being Scarlet Witch versus Multiversal Kang, or if Scarlet Witch is just going to be the antagonist in Multiverse of Madness, and if she's actually going to be able to snatch her kids from someplace else in the multiverse and keep them to anchor Young Avengers and combine them with America Chavez and Ironheart and everybody else, it remains to be seen. But this is a good time to be in the MCU. Can you remember, just on a goof, can you remember a time when a single genre has so dominated the entire movie landscape in the way that superhero movies, kicked off by the success of the MCU, but even into the DCEU, which, as trashy as it is not abating. It's not slowing down at all in terms of releasing films. Because I can't think of a time. Star Wars inspired a lot of crappy sci-fi space
Sure.
movies, but it was never like there's a Star Wars like movie
I mean,
four
in
times
the
a year
80s,
every year.
it's not as built as the MCU is. It's not as like connected as the MCU is. But in the 80s, high school rom-coms, John Hughes shit, like that kind of stuff, I think was very, very saturated in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's not connected the way the MCU is, but I would imagine if you went back and looked at every year from like 1984 to like 1987, there's probably 3-4 movies per year that came out that was aimed directly towards that group.
Yeah, I guess there was that whole teen sex fascination that turned, but it didn't last for
It didn't
10
last as
years.
long. No. It lasted
It
for
was
maybe
like,
like 6, 7.
well, but none of those movies, I mean, you had the whole Golan Globus. Everybody was, just making movies, canon films. They're making these low budget, get them out films. They didn't dominate, even though they were in the marketplace. They didn't completely dominate the marketplace in the way that superheroes have been dominating,
You don't think so
every,
with like Back to the Future and like, do
well,
you know
but
what I
Back to
mean?
the Future wasn't, I mean, I
It's a
don't
high
know if
school,
but it was also time travel and heavy sci-fi, and that was 3 movies, and they were spaced out over what, 6 or 7 years.
yeah.
So you didn't see there were definitely movies, but Back to the Future, because it was a cross genre thing and had sci-fi and had, of course, Marty McFly and all that was a box office smash.
Sure.
Ghostbusters was a box office smash, but you really only had 2 movies. And I'm just saying,
yeah, I think it's in trilogies, but like nothing that's 25 movies big. But yeah, but like you've got like the Matrix trilogy, you've got the 2 trilogies you've already mentioned. Like those kinds of things happened. Blade, the trilogy,
right.
but not like this.
Although
Blade is coming in, so we just have to.
Yeah, Blade is coming back, but we can't wait. But of course, that's MCU, and so that just kind of ties back into the thing. I would say there was a time when there were lots of vampire movies. There seemed to be a lot of fascination with vampires. But again, I don't think there's been a year since the first Avengers crossed $1 billion where the number 1 movie wasn't a superhero movie in a year. I just don't. I don't think it's true.
Well, Candyman. Currently, or at least a couple weeks ago.
No, I'm saying for the year. I'm saying at the end total for the year. A number 1 debut, sure, but the top grossing movie, I'd be willing to bet that the top grossing movie, except maybe for a year, like there were some Fast and Furious years, but if a superhero movie was released by Marvel post Avengers, if there was a movie released by Marvel that year, I'd wager number 1, or at least in the top 3 or top 5 without question. And they've just become this juggernaut, and I don't see signs of it stopping. The marketplace doesn't seem to be getting tired of it.
No, it doesn't. I think that's what's causing some of the push and pull between the different kind of like levels of filmmakers and filmmaking, because of exactly what you're saying. And granted, I'm Team Marvel now, so I'm not, whatever, shitting on anybody. But it is for smaller, more independent films really frustrating because they can't get into theaters because theaters are only taking these massive blockbusters, and that's partially due to Marvel. So I understand the discourse there, but I also like Marvel movies, so it is what it is, I guess.
Well, and there are months in between Marvel releases that you can
stop it.
You can sneak in and get on that 75-seat capacity theater. And streaming has also changed the landscape a lot. I mean,
that's what's made the difference is the streaming. People, I think, independent filmmakers right now, I think, are concentrating more on trying to get things
on Netflix or Amazon
than they are
or Hulu
in
or
theaters. Yeah,
right. And I mean, well, when that War Child movie with Idris Elba, not Beast of the Southern Wild, that was that movie that was released on Netflix and then released in a single theater in order for Oscar consideration. He was a warlord in Africa training children soldiers, and it was released on Netflix, and then they put it in one theater in New York and I think one theater in LA just to qualify it for Oscar consideration.
My reaction to that is why people are upset, because I was like,
yeah, sure,
what? I don't know. Yeah,
it was. Hey, honey.
Do you see?
I do see that. Fucking freaks me out.
I was like, no,
honey man, honey man.
See, I can't.
That was hilarious. So, as we wind up the show, just some things that are coming in the future. There's lots of Marvel. We are in the midst of What If. We've had 5 What If episodes. There are 5 more, or maybe 6, but I think 5 more What If episodes. Hawkeye is coming after that. Eternals is coming in November, and then that's going to take us into, well, I guess Venom 2, which is a mercifully short 90 minutes. And, that's not MCU, but since Sony is MCU adjacent now, I'm going to see it. And then we've got,
Spider-Man.
Because that's October. Yeah, so then we got Spider-Man. Yeah, so Eternals is November, Spider-Man is December. There appears to be an open question as to whether or not they're going to show something between Eternals and Spider-Man, because that's a long window. Because Eternals is early November and Spider-Man is late December, and they do have a Disney Plus series on deck with Ms. Marvel. That there was a question as to whether or not they might do Ms. Marvel, if they're going to save Ms. Marvel for closer to Multiverse of Madness or something like that. But there's lots of Marvel-y stuff, and we also thought that we would cover some other streaming stuff.
Yeah, so, and some nerd news stuff as well. So we've got Great British Bake Off coming back, which I'm super excited about. Yes, that's coming back end of this month. That's right. And I think whenever Cobra Kai comes back out, we'll probably talk about
Cobra
that
Kai
a little bit.
Cobra Kai is coming soon. Yeah.
So yeah, there's things on Netflix, Apple TV, Hulu, all that kind of stuff that we'll probably pop in and out of as well. Since we're doing more real-time Marvel stuff and it's being released kind of monthly versus weekly. So we'll see what kind of schedule this works out for season 3, but it may not be as consistent as some of the other schedules have tried to be, but we'll pop up and hopefully you will listen.
Watch Clickbait. Tell me what you think. I'm also watching Truth Be Told right now, which is an Apple Plus show, and of course Ted Lasso. You converted me.
Yes.
You converted me.
This last episode was maybe one of the best written episodes of television I've seen in years. It was super good.
Ted's transformation, and this is what I was looking for from the first season, the transformation from the eternally sunny, eternal sunshine, the spotless mind.
Spoilers.
He's going through some stuff. He's experiencing some stuff. Even while his career is on the rise, he's experiencing some personal trauma. And so I have really enjoyed the interplay between him and the doctor, the team psychologist. And a super surprise romance that I don't know that anybody saw coming, which was sweet. So
and some interpersonal relationships within the team that are making some steps and strides that are
absolutely
very well. They were very well developed, and
the transformation of Jamie Tart. I mean,
I was like, I called a friend and I was like, oh shit, I like Jamie. I didn't want to like Jamie. Now I like Jamie.
Yeah, he's the whole thing is really coming together, and I'm interested to see what season 3 will offer as we kind of start to wind down season 2. We got the whole Bad News Bears thing going on, and so first season ended in relegation, and there's not going to be a whole lot of football left, I don't think, in the rest of this season, however many episodes there are, just given what happened in this last episode. But the interpersonal stuff is great, and Coach Roy is amazing, and the show's, it's a good show. It's really a good show.
It's a good show, guys. If you're not
do you have anything else, sibling?
I don't think so. I think that's about it. Yeah. Deuces.
I'm Tom Cunningham.
I'm Toni Cunningham.
And this is Sibling Nerdlery.
Oh,
Jamie Tart, do
piercing.
do 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 do.
Ah,
Jamie
Jamie
Tart, do
Tart.
do 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 do. Jamie Tart, do 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 do. Jamie Tart.